All right. Hey guys, welcome back to Industrial Live. I'm Jeff Hine with SVN, and thank you for joining. And today we are talking about the impact of coronavirus, of course, its impact particularly on Denver industrial real estate. And we're also going to touch on a few other topics like the recent decline in oil prices, decline in interest rates, how that's going to affect things potentially. And we're also going to touch on the other property types as well, retail and office, not just industrial. So as you can see, I'm working from home. I apologize, you have to look at my bed, but I live in a downtown studio here in Denver, so got to work with what we got. Now, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? So let's start by talking about the recent decline in oil prices. Now, this is not directly related to the coronavirus, as I'm sure you know, but it happened at virtually the same exact time. And historically, oil has had a huge impact on Denver's overall economy. So is this bad news for us? Well, back in the 80s, oil and gas actually occupied about 30% of all office space in the Denver CBD, Central Business District. But now the impact of oil and gas as a player here, they used to be the only player in town, but now they're actually the fifth largest job sector in the Denver economy. They're behind things like tech, healthcare, financial services, and telecommunications. And can't find a good stat on this one right now, but we think that they occupy a little bit less than 10% of the Denver CBD, probably like 8 or 9%. And still, we have tech companies moving in. We have actually more diverse array of companies, not just tech companies. BF Corp recently had the huge Denver expansion. So not too worried as a whole about the impact of oil and gas, the decline in prices on the Denver economy, because relative to the whole economy, it's much, much smaller than it used to be back in the heyday. Now, let's talk a little bit about, more specifically, the coronavirus's impact on the three primary asset classes in commercial real estate. Obviously, retail is getting hit the hardest right now, and tenants are already asking for rent abatement, free rent, or deferred rent. And that's not the topic of today's video, but there are 5 possible ways of handling that tenant request. So if you guys would like a white paper covering all 5 ways, comment down below and I will get that over to you. On to office. The impact is pretty unclear right now. Most companies who use office space can work remotely, which is a huge plus. They can continue operating. But we might see office demand getting reduced over the medium to long term, because what this could do is speed up a transition to working remotely, because companies have to try it right now. They're kind of forced to try working remotely. They're going to try new software programs to facilitate that, video conferencing, and chances are that some of them are going to realize that this remote working, video conferencing thing, it's more plausible than they previously expected. So we might see some type of transition, more people working remote, and a gradual decrease in office space demand. Obviously, co-working is probably going to take a harder hit relative to other office spaces because they have such short lease terms. So someone who's on a month-to-month agreement for co-working space could cancel. Now let's talk about industrial. So if you're an industrial property owner right now, I would say you're probably doing better off than 99% of everyone in America right now, because people in the stock market have seen their portfolio get chopped up to bits. Any retail landlord is not happy right now. And arguably, there's no better asset class, commercial asset class, to be in. Arguably, maybe multifamily, but industrial is probably the number one. Now, I'll tell you why. Because logistics in particular is, it seems like in most cases, actually benefiting from this whole coronavirus scenario. Amazon, for example, just announced that they're actually going to hire an additional 100,000 workers, full-time and part-time, in order to satisfy the increased demand for e-commerce. I'm sure we're also going to see other people trying, for example, they call it e-grocery. It's grocery delivery, online delivery for your food. And just like how people were trying these technologies in the office space and it might get sticky, they might stick with it long term, we would expect that the same thing would happen for e-commerce and e-grocery. People realize that, oh, hey, I can get my toothpaste delivered to my door. I don't have to go to Walgreens. Or, you can just get your food delivered rather than going to the supermarket. And these conveniences are probably going to stick around and gain traction more quickly than they were projected to previously. So logistics is doing quite well right now. Manufacturing, you're going to see some winners and losers here depending on the goods they're producing. For example, if you're producing goods for the airline industry, you're no doubt taking a hit. I was talking to the owner of a home gym distribution company the other day, and he's having like the week of his life right now because everyone's ordering home gym equipment. So there's going to be winners and losers there. But overall, the vast majority, if not significant majority, of industrial users can keep running their business. Consumer spending patterns are going to change, but it's definitely not like retail or even office where the overall trend is a decline. It's more of a change in consumer spending patterns that's going to benefit some, it's going to hurt others, but the demand for industrial should remain steady, if not go up. So I would summarize the impact on retail, office, industrial in terms of speeding up the long-term trends that we've been seeing and people have been predicting. It seems like it's just making those happen more quickly. Now, finally, let's touch on interest rates. As you guys no doubt know, the Fed slashed rates by another 100 basis points, effectively cutting them to zero. And, in terms of the impact on the overall economy, is that actually going to help the economy? Not a topic for me, but what I do know is that interest rates are the number one determinant of commercial real estate prices. So as long as interest rates are low and people or investors can borrow money cheaply enough to cover all their expenses and get a satisfactory cash flow, prices are still going to remain high. If you look at owner users, they're looking at their bottom line. So if debt is cheap, they can pay a higher price and still have a satisfactory bottom line number that they're paying out for their real estate every month. So interest rates are, low interest rates, I should say, are going to be good for keeping commercial real estate prices high. Now, the one issue that we're having is that everyone and their mom is trying to refinance right now. So debt is pretty hard to come by. Lenders are overwhelmed. They can't keep up with all their applications. Now, if you are thinking about a refinance, I would say it's one of the best times in history to do so. The rule of thumb on whether you should consider a refinance is if your rate is going to decrease by at least 100 basis points. So let's say you're going from a 5% rate to a 4% rate or lower, then it almost definitely makes sense to refinance. If it's less than 100 basis points, like maybe you're going from a 5% to a 4.5% or 4.25%, you got to run the numbers to see if it's going to make sense, because you're going to have some closing costs to refinance that debt. So, and yeah, one more note on that. If you are looking at a refi, I wouldn't say you have to rush into it right now, because chances are that these low rates are going to stick around for at least a couple or a few months or so. And they're probably actually going to go lower than where they are right now, the day I'm recording this, which is mid-March 2020. So to wrap it up, I think Denver's going to be just fine. Industrial is better than the rest. I'm biased there, no surprise. And everything boosting the Denver economy, boosting industrial as an asset class that existed before the coronavirus is still in play. For owners out there, I think it could actually just speed up the appreciation of a Denver industrial asset relative to other investments especially. So there you go, guys. I hope you found this useful or at least thought-provoking. Feel free to comment below. If you want that white paper, let me know. And look forward to checking in with you next time. Thanks again.